Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from 6th group. Will be present about the material is cross-linguistic influence. With the member of group are Rizka Maulita, Yayang Karisma Putri, Agustin Wulandari, Indrayana Puspitasari, Syarifah Evita Nurfaradila, and Ulin Nabila. The material on L1 and L2 differences and similarities. This assumption inspired a wave of research comparing similarities and differences between given language pairs. It was believed that systematic L1 and L2 comparisons would eventually allow research to predict when the negative transfer will occur. L1 French speakers find no problem with this difference when they learn English. By contrast, for L1 English learner of French, it poses much more difficult. And next will be explained by Yayang Karisma.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Yayang Karisma Putri. I would like to explain the next material is interlingual identification. Interlingual identification, however, don't always involve a conscious judgment, as transfer will often occur at the subconscious level as well. Most importantly, as you will see in the chapter, interlingual identification are influenced by at least three factors. Number one, the nature of the specific L2 phenomena and the universal forces that shape its natural development. Number two, learners perfectly distance between the L1 and the L2 and their enthusiasm of what is transferable or not. Number three, their relative forces level. Next, beside the L1, in this topic of to analyze of actual learners language rather than comparing external L1 L2 difference, early SLR research also uncovered some fundamental similarity between the emerging language of children according their L1 and young and old learners according their L2. First, language influence fish development. Development in English are well understood. At the earliest stage of development of L2 English learners using verbal negation no or not plus verb, the effect of the L1 become visible only when one considers rather of development. In other words, when the rules for negation in the L1 are incurred with the L2 rules, L2 development in this given area is slowed down. English question formatting is another area for which a development path has been well mapped in SLR research.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Agustin Wulandari. I want to continue the next explanation. Here, the explanation about Magnus and L1 transfer. Can a cup break? Transferability, and last, avoidance. Magnus and L1 transfer. Magnus is another important source of universal influence when learning human language that is known to interact with L1 influence. In second language acquisition, the Magnus relationship is marked and unmarked. Unmarked, where the given possibilities range from simplest and most frequent across language of the world. marks to most complex and most rare. Linguistics have found markers hierarchy across the world's languages in a number of key areas of morphology, phonology, and syntax. For example, is relative clause. Next, can a cup break transferability? Eric Kellerman, 1979, 1983, 1985 introduced an important notice in the study of L1 influence. Transferability, you might also find the term psychotypology used in second language acquisition to transfer to the same concept. Kellerman's 1979 break study, for example, the verb break in English and its Dutch counterpart breken. He broke his leg. The cup broke. Alas, avoidance. Most of the examples of negative transfer you have encountered thus far involve so-called error of commission during through speaking and writing. Jacqueline Socrates, 1974, study of the relative clause, an error analysis, but clause introduced in English by who, which, or that, and whose. The Persian and Arabic L2 writers incorrect many errors related to relative clause, 74 in total. But they also employ many more instances of relativization than the other two L1 background group. 3028 until more than double the number of relative clauses contributed by the Chinese and Japanese essay. Okay, I think enough from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I'm Sarifah Evita Nurfaradela. I would like to explain about underuse and overuse. Scott Jarvis and Terence Odlin, 2000, they reanalyzed the L1 Finnish and L1 Swedish adolescents retellings that had been elicited by Jarvis 2002. Retellings produced by the Finnish-speaking adolescents. Positive L1 influence on L2 learning rate. Another important fact to remember about how L1 knowledge influences L2 learning is that the effect can be not only negative but also positive. Knowledge of the L1 can often have a positive impact on the rate of L2 learning. For many years now, Hakan Rimpon, 1987, 1992, and 2007 has been a strong advocate of the idea that relevant knowledge in the L1 can accelerate the rate of L2 learning. First language influence beneath the surface, the case of information structure. Language are known to be of two kinds with regard to this feature. Topic prominent language organize information in sentence through the statement of a topic, followed by the new information. Carroll et al. 2000 argue that information structure in the L1 continues to exert an important if subtle influence on the L2 even at very advanced stage of proficiency.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Indriana. Here, I want to continue the explanation. I would like to explain about cross-linguistic influence across all layers of language. Crosslinguistic influence in the field of pragmatic competence is a strong example of this point. U 2004 found that 64 L1 Taiwanese English-speaking learners, half of whom resided in Taiwan and half of whom resided in the United States. You attribute this result to transfer from the L1 of a Taiwanese interactional style that value modesty over agreeability. The next, beyond the L1, cross-linguistic influence across multiple languages. The study of the impact of cross-language learning during acquisition of L3 is only beginning to evolve in SLA. But the current data clearly indicates two conclusions: that bilingualism usually promotes the degree of acquisition of L3, and that the transition does not actually come from L1. The discovery that L1 may not need to have a privileged position across the board in the acquisition of additional language opened the door to new suggestions that cross-linguistic language effect can occur in reverse direction, from L2 or L3 and beyond to L1. And last, the limits of cross-linguistic influence. Punjabier, a Spanish learner whose language don't have an inversion, can infer that it is the L1 that makes this option. In turn, this interpretation is consistent with the definition of the two particular set L1s. Audience 2003 is an important and rarely voiced point that helps to bring phenomena into a wider perspective. He notes that the macro context can also shape the nature and magnitude of the cross-linguistic influence. I think enough, and thank you.
Okay, so we are in the end of the discussion about cross-linguistic influences. And before I go to the conclusion, I'm going to give a brief summary about the materials of cross-linguistic influences. So, by definition, L2 acquisition takes place in humans who already possess one or more language. This being so, the mother tongue and any other non-language universally influences the process and outcomes of L2 learning. Transfer is a highly complex phenomenon. It can be caused by perceived L1, L2 similarities as well as by large differences, and it goes well beyond stricten causes and awkward transliteration from the L1. The influences of mother tongue cannot explain all phenomena in intralingual development because universal influences that operate in all natural language exercise a powerful effect on L2 development. Knowledge of the L1 interacts with such developmental forces but does not override them. And then cross-linguistic influences, even in cases of negative transfer, may or may not lead to ungrammatical solution. Transfer can be manifested in errors of commission, errors of omission, avoidance, and L1 patterned frequencies, underuse and overuse. It can also result in subtle effect beyond form or form function misidentification and can occur at all levels of language, from informative structure to pragmatics and thinking for speaking. And then the conclusion is that based on the details described above, we can conclude that cross-linguistic influences refer to the effect of a language on another. Cross-linguistic influences often refer as transfer is important factor to consider in the study of second language acquisition in general. The 13 points in cross-linguistic that need to be understood are L1, L2 differences and similarities, interlingual identification. Beside the L1, first language influences vis-a-vis development, markedness, and L1 transfer can break transferability, avoidance, underuse, and overuse, positive L1 influences on L2 learning rate, first language influence beneath the surface, the case of information structure, cross-linguistic influences across all layers of language, beyond the L1 cross-linguistic influences across multiple language, and the limits of linguistic influences. So this is the end of the discussion about the cross-linguistic influences. We are, as a whole group, would like to say thank you for your attention, and we would like to say sorry if there is a mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.